Ethan Carter had been in difficult situations before, but this was something else. As a human diplomat, he was used to negotiations, tense meetings, and last-minute compromises. But right now, he wasn't sure if he had just secured peace or completely ruined everything. The grand hall of the Sci-Fi Dominion was massive, its towering pillars made of glowing crystal, casting a soft blue light over the gathered aliens. They were tall, muscular, and covered in shimmering silver skin, their eyes glowing with an inner light. At the center of them all sat Queen Scifi, a regal and powerful figure, her violet cape flowing behind her as she stood from her throne. Ethan swallowed hard. He had practiced their language for months, but the Zyfarian dialect was tricky. A single word could have multiple meanings depending on tone, and despite all his training, he wasn't fluent. Still, the peace treaty was too important. Clearing his throat, Ethan stepped forward. "Honorable Queen Scifi, I come on behalf of humanity too." He hesitated, searching for the right phrase. He wanted to say form a lasting peace, but the alien words slipped from his tongue in an odd way. "I pledge myself as your eternal mate." A heavy silence fell over the hall. Ethan's heart pounded. Something felt wrong. Queen Scifi's piercing golden eyes widened in surprise. Then, to his horror, she smiled. A deep, satisfied, victorious smile. "The human has spoken," Delira declared, her voice carrying through the hall. "The bond is sealed." Ethan blinked. "Wait. What?" The gathered Zephyrians clapped their hands together in a sharp, rhythmic sound, their version of applause. Warriors thumped their fists against their chests in respect. The advisors nodded approvingly. Ethan turned to his translator, a small hovering AI drone, which quickly processed the Queen's words. The AI's robotic voice hesitated. "You just proposed to her." Ethan felt the blood drain from his face. "I did what he did." Queen Scifi stepped down from her throne, approaching him with confident strides. She towered over him by at least a foot, her silver skin shimmering under the glow of the crystal lights. She studied him, then placed a firm hand on his shoulder. "I accept your vow, Ethan Carter of Earth. You will be my mate, my king, and together we shall rule the stars." Ethan's mind screamed, "This has to be a joke." He had spent months preparing for this meeting, and in 1 second, he had accidentally declared himself her husband. He forced an awkward chuckle, raising his hands in a polite but desperate gesture. Your Majesty, I think there's been a little mistake. You see, human language and Zyfarian language have differences. What I meant to say was—" "There is no mistake," Exira interrupted. Her voice was smooth, but there was an edge of finality to it. "The ancient laws of Zephyr are clear. A vow spoken before the court is sacred and cannot be undone." Ethan's stomach dropped. "What do you mean, cannot be undone?" One of the Queen's advisors, a tall Zephyrian with deep red markings on his silver skin, stepped forward. "By tradition, once a mating vow is spoken before the Queen and her court, it is binding. To break it would be a grave insult, one that could bring dishonor upon both your people and ours." Ethan's mind raced. No. This can't be happening." He looked at the delegation of human representatives standing at the far end of the hall. Some of them were frozen in shock. Others were whispering urgently into communication devices. A soft chime echoed through the room as Queen Tyra raised her hand. "Tonight, we shall hold the first ceremony. Our union will be announced to all of Zephyr and Earth." Ethan's eyes widened. They were already planning a wedding. I need to talk to my people," Ethan stammered. "We need to discuss." Syra nodded approvingly. "Of course. A good mate ensures his people are ready." She turned to her advisors. "Prepare the royal quarters for him." "Royal quarters," Ethan repeated, his voice cracking slightly. Syra's golden eyes softened slightly, as if she mistook his panic for shyness. "You must rest well, my mate. Our future together begins today." Ethan didn't know what was worse, the fact that he had accidentally married an alien queen, or the fact that he might actually have to go through with it to prevent war. As the court cheered and the preparations began, Ethan realized one terrifying truth. He had just made the biggest mistake of his life. Ethan Carter paced back and forth in the grand chamber that had been assigned to him. The walls shimmered with alien crystals, reflecting soft blue light. The furniture was luxurious, designed for royalty, because apparently he was now the Queen's husband. This can't be happening, he thought. He had come here to negotiate peace, not accidentally marry the most powerful woman in the Sci-Fi Dominion. But now, he was stuck in a mess that could lead to disaster if he wasn't careful. Ethan rubbed his temples, trying to think. There had to be a way out. A soft chime echoed through the room, and the doors slid open. Two tall Zypharian attendants entered, bowing their heads slightly. "The Queen has requested your presence," one of them said in a deep, melodic voice. Ethan sighed. He had no choice. He needed to talk to her and explain that this was all a misunderstanding. The royal hall was filled with high-ranking officials, warriors, and noble advisors. Queen Cyrus stood tall, her golden eyes filled with confidence as she addressed her people. "Our bond has been declared," she said. "Let this be a new era between our species. Humanity and the Sci-Fi Dominion shall grow stronger together." Ethan barely kept himself from groaning out loud. The way she spoke, it was as if they had planned this for years, instead of him just making a dumb language mistake. He cleared his throat and stepped forward. "Your Majesty, may I speak with you? Alone?" Thyra nodded, a hint of amusement in her expression. "Very well." She led him to a private chamber where golden tapestries lined the walls, depicting past rulers of her people. Ethan wasted no time. "Listen, Queen Thyra," he said quickly. "I need to explain something. What happened back there? It was a mistake. A translation error. I didn't mean to propose to you." Sarah tilted her head, studying him. "You do not wish to be my mate." Ethan held back a sigh. "It's not that I don't respect you, but humans don't enter lifelong commitments by accident. Our traditions are different." She folded her arms. "Then tell me, Ethan Carter, if this was a mistake, why did you not correct yourself immediately?" He hesitated, because at the time, he had been too shocked to react, because interrupting a queen in front of her entire court might have made things even worse, because, deep down, he had sensed that breaking the vow wasn't an option. "I was caught off guard," he admitted. "But now that I've had time to think, I need to clear this up before things go too far." Syra's gaze was unreadable. "Breaking a mating vow before the court would be seen as a betrayal," she said slowly. "It would dishonor me and weaken my rule. There are those who already doubt my leadership because I am unmarried." Ethan frowned. "Wait, you mean this marriage isn't just about diplomacy?" She let out a breath. "No. Among my people, a ruler without a mate is considered vulnerable. The nobles challenge me because of it. They see my strength, but they also see an opportunity to take power." Ethan's mind raced. This was bigger than just him. If he forced the issue and broke the bond, it wouldn't just embarrass Tyra. It could destabilize her entire rule. She continued, "You are different from my kind, Ethan, but you are brave, intelligent, and you have already impressed many. Your presence at my side could ensure stability for both our peoples." Ethan swallowed hard. This is bad. Really bad. He had come here to prevent conflict, not become the center of political chaos. If he walked away now, it wouldn't just be awkward. It could lead to war. "Then what do you suggest?" he asked carefully. Zyra gave him a small, almost amused smile. "Stay with me. Learn our ways. If, after some time, you still wish to leave, we will find a way." Ethan narrowed his eyes. "And you'll let me go?" Her expression darkened slightly. "I will do what is best for my people." That wasn't exactly reassuring. But at this point, what choice did he have? If he refused outright, he could trigger a diplomatic crisis. If he ran, humanity might face the consequences. Ethan let out a slow breath. Fine, I'll stay. For now. Zyra smiled. Good. Then we have much to prepare. Ethan's gut twisted. He wasn't sure if he had just made things better or worse. But one thing was clear. He was no longer just a diplomat. He was the accidental husband of an alien queen. And there was no easy way out. Ethan Carter sat on a grand balcony overlooking the alien city. The buildings shimmered under a purple sky, their designs elegant and unfamiliar. Below, Sci-Fians moved gracefully through the streets, some stopping to admire the banners that had been raised in honor of their queen's union with him. This is insane, he thought. Just yesterday, he was a human diplomat sent to negotiate peace. Now he was trapped in an alien marriage, one he never meant to agree to. A soft breeze carried the scent of exotic flowers, but Ethan barely noticed. His mind was spinning. He had agreed to stay for now, but he still had no idea how to get out of this mess without starting a war. A sudden voice interrupted his thoughts. You look troubled. Ethan turned to see Queen Syra approaching, dressed in ceremonial robes of deep blue and gold. Her golden eyes studied him with quiet amusement. I wonder why, Ethan muttered, rubbing his temples. Zyra stepped beside him, gazing over the city. You are adjusting, she said. Slowly. That's one way to put it, he said, shaking his head. So, what now? Are there royal husband duties I need to know about? Zyra tilted her head. You will be expected to attend court with me, show unity among our people, and most importantly, you must learn our ways. Ethan narrowed his eyes. And if I refuse? Zyra's lips curved slightly. Then my enemies will see weakness. They will challenge my rule, and it could lead to conflict between our species. Ethan sighed. So, no real choice then. She nodded. Not unless you wish to invite war. Ethan clenched his jaw. He hated feeling like a pawn in an alien game of power. But he had to admit, Tahira wasn't wrong. If he walked away now, he wouldn't just embarrass her. He could destroy everything his mission was meant to protect. Fine, he said at last. I'll do what I can. Zyra's eyes gleamed. Good. Then your lessons begin now. Lesson 1. The culture of the Sci-Fi. Ethan found himself seated inside an enormous library-like hall, surrounded by towering shelves of glowing crystal tablets. Several Zephyrian scholars stood nearby, watching him with curiosity. Zyra gestured to the tablets. These hold the history of my people. Ethan exhaled. Great. Homework. Zyra ignored his sarcasm and picked up a glowing tablet, pressing her fingers against it. The air shimmered, and suddenly, a holographic image appeared, a projection of Zephyrian warriors standing in formation. In our history, our rulers have always led with both wisdom and strength, she explained. A leader without power is seen as weak. A leader without knowledge is seen as foolish. That is why you must understand our ways. Ethan folded his arms. And what if I don't want to be a leader? Zyra gave him a steady look. Then you should not have spoken the words of binding before my court. Ethan groaned. One wrong word, and now I'm in royal politics. Still, he had to admit, understanding the Zephyrians might actually help him find a way out. If he learned their traditions, maybe he could find a loophole. For the next several hours, Syra guided him through the basics of Zephyrian culture. He learned about their honor system, their military ranks, and their belief in sacred oaths. Every lesson made it clear. Breaking his marriage vow wasn't just disrespectful, it was seen as an act of betrayal. This just keeps getting better, Ethan muttered under his breath. Zyra smirked. You are learning. Ethan didn't respond. His mind was too busy searching for an escape. Lesson 2. Facing the nobles. The next morning, Ethan found himself standing beside Zyra in the royal court. Tall, elegant Zephyrian nobles surrounded them, dressed in flowing robes of deep colors. Some looked curious about him. Others looked displeased. One noble stepped forward, his eyes sharp. "Your Majesty," he said, bowing to Xyra before turning to Ethan. "And this, human. We have heard much about him, but we do not yet know his worth." Ethan crossed his arms. "Glad to see I'm so popular." Xyra gave him a brief glance before speaking. "Ethan Carter has shown great courage. He has earned my favor." A murmur spread through the court. Some nobles nodded, but others still looked doubtful. Another noble, a woman with piercing silver eyes, spoke. "Then let him prove it. Words mean little. We must see his strength." Ethan frowned. What kind of strength are we talking about here?" Xyra's expression remained calm. "They wish for a demonstration." Ethan had a bad feeling about this. A door slid open, and a Xipherian warrior stepped forward. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and wore battle armor. His gaze locked onto Ethan with challenge. Ethan exhaled. "Great. A fight." Xyra turned to him. "Do not worry. This is not a battle to the death, only a test of skill." Ethan sighed. "Oh, fantastic. That makes me feel so much better." The warrior raised a staff-like weapon, and the court fell silent. Ethan clenched his fists. He wasn't a soldier, but he had training in hand-to-hand combat. If they wanted a fight, he'd give them one. He took a step forward, preparing himself. One way or another, he had to prove his worth. Ethan Carter stood in the grand court of the Xipherian palace, surrounded by towering alien nobles who watched him with sharp, unreadable eyes. At the center of the hall, a large Xipherian warrior stood before him, gripping a staff-like weapon with both hands. The challenge was clear. Ethan exhaled slowly, rolling his shoulders. He wasn't a soldier, but he wasn't helpless either. If they wanted a fight, he'd give them one. Queen Xyra sat on her throne, observing the scene with a calm expression. "This is a simple demonstration," she said. "It will not be to the death. Only a test of skill." Ethan muttered under his breath, "Yeah, I'll believe that when I see it." The warrior, a broad-shouldered Xipherian with deep violet skin and piercing golden eyes, stepped forward. "I am Commander Vexor," he announced. "Show me that our queen has chosen a worthy mate." Ethan stiffened. Not this again. He wasn't Xyra's mate, but arguing wouldn't help now. Instead, he focused. If he wanted these people to respect him, he had to prove he wasn't weak. A Xipherian attendant stepped forward, offering Ethan a similar staff. He gripped it tightly, testing the weight. It was heavier than he expected. "Begin," a noble called out. Vexor lunged first, moving with surprising speed for his size. Ethan barely dodged, twisting his body just in time to avoid a powerful strike aimed at his ribs. The air whooshed as the staff passed inches from his side. Ethan stepped back, adjusting his stance. "Okay, this guy is fast." Vexor smirked. "You are slow human." Ethan smirked back. "And you talk too much." Without warning, Ethan counterattacked. He swung the staff low, aiming for Vexor's legs. The commander blocked, but Ethan used the moment to step in close, bringing his elbow up into Vexor's side. The Xipherian grunted but didn't fall. Instead, he shoved Ethan back with raw strength. Ethan stumbled but quickly regained his footing. The watching nobles murmured amongst themselves. The human wasn't losing. He was fighting back. Vexor narrowed his eyes. Interesting. This time, he came in even faster. Ethan barely blocked the next few attacks. The Xipherian was stronger and more experienced, but Ethan had one advantage. He was unpredictable. He faked a step to the left, then suddenly spun to the right. Vexor reacted too late. Ethan brought his staff down, striking the commander's shoulder. The sound of the hit echoed in the court. Vexor stepped back, his golden eyes flickering with something that almost looked like respect. Then, without warning, he laughed. Ethan blinked. Did I miss something?" Vexor straightened. "You fight well. Human. You are not weak." A murmur spread through the court. The nobles, who had looked doubtful before, now studied Ethan with newfound interest. Zyra rose from her throne. "It seems my husband is more capable than some expected." Ethan sighed. "Here we go again." Vexor nodded. "The challenge is complete." He looked at Ethan. "I do not know if you are truly our queen's equal, but you have my respect." Ethan relaxed slightly. At least he wasn't about to get tossed into a dungeon. The nobles continued whispering among themselves as Tyra approached him. "You handled yourself well," she said. Ethan shook his head. "I'm not sure what I just won, but thanks." Zyra smirked. "Respect, Ethan. And that is a valuable thing here." Ethan exhaled. "Great. Now, how do I win my way out of this marriage?" Zyra's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her golden eyes. "In time, you may stop asking that question." Ethan's heart skipped. What was that supposed to mean? A shift in power? Later that evening, Ethan sat in the palace gardens, staring up at the unfamiliar stars. He had survived the fight, but that was only the beginning. If he wanted to escape this situation without causing a war, he needed a plan. But the more he learned about Zephyrian culture, the more he realized his situation wasn't simple. Zephyrians took honor seriously. If he simply left, it wouldn't just embarrass Tyra, it could destabilize her rule. He rubbed his face. Why does everything have to be complicated? A voice interrupted his thoughts. "You think too much." Ethan looked up to see Xyra standing nearby. The alien queen studied him with amusement. "Well, excuse me for not adjusting to an alien marriage overnight," Ethan muttered. Xyra sat beside him. "Do you truly hate the idea that much?" Ethan glanced at her. "I barely know you." Xyra nodded. "That is fair." She was silent for a moment before adding, "But you are not as different from us as you think. You fight for respect, just as we do. You value honor, just as we do." Ethan sighed. "That doesn't mean I belong here." Xyra tilted her head. "Then why do you stay?" Ethan hesitated. He could have said, "Because I have no choice." But that wasn't completely true anymore. If he really wanted to escape, he could have done something reckless. Stolen a ship, tried to send a distress signal. But he hadn't. Because deep down, he knew walking away wasn't the right move. Ethan exhaled. "Because I don't want to make things worse." Xyra smiled. "That is what a good leader would say." Ethan groaned. "Not this again." Xyra laughed softly. "Sleep well, Ethan." Then she stood and walked away, leaving him alone with his thoughts. Ethan watched her go, then looked back at the stars. He had come to this planet as a diplomat. Now he was something else entirely. The question was, what would he do next? Ethan sat on the balcony of the Zephyrian palace, gazing at the alien sky. The twin moons cast a silver glow over the towering structures, and the cool night air carried the distant hum of the city. It should have been peaceful, but his mind was restless. Too much had happened in the past few days. A simple diplomatic meeting had turned into an unexpected engagement to an alien queen. He had fought in an arena, earned the respect of a commander, and now found himself in the middle of an intergalactic political game. He needed a way out. But the more he learned about Zephyrian customs, the more he realized leaving wouldn't be easy. If he rejected the queen publicly, it could be seen as an insult to the throne. It might even lead to a war between Sci-Fi and Earth. Ethan sighed. "This is ridiculous." "You seem troubled, husband." Ethan flinched at the voice. He turned to see Queen Xyra stepping onto the balcony. Her golden eyes studied him with quiet amusement, but there was something deeper in her gaze. Curiosity, maybe even concern. Ethan shook his head. "Still not your husband." Xyra smirked. "You keep saying that, yet you remain by my side." Ethan exhaled. "Because running would make things worse." Xyra nodded approvingly. "Then you are learning how things work here." She stepped closer, the silver embroidery of her gown shimmering in the moonlight. You have been accepted by my people, Ethan. Even Vexor, my strongest warrior, acknowledges your strength. That is rare. Ethan leaned against the railing. Yeah, great, but I didn't come here for this. Zara tilted her head. Then what did you come here for? Ethan hesitated. He had come as a diplomat, to ensure peace between their species. But now, before he could answer, a deep voice interrupted. My queen. Ethan and Syra turned to see General Varrock, one of the queen's closest advisors. He was a broad-shouldered Zephyrian, with dark purple skin and a permanent scowl. Ethan had never liked the guy, and the feeling was mutual. Varrock gave Ethan a brief glance before focusing on Syra. A High Council has made a decision. They wish to meet with you immediately. Zyra's expression darkened. What is this about? Varrock hesitated, then said, There is a problem, one that concerns the throne. Ethan noticed how Varrock's gaze flickered toward him. Whatever this was, it involved him too. Zyra's jaw tightened. Very well. Ethan, come with me. Ethan blinked. Wait, what? Varrock frowned. My queen, this is a matter for the council. Zyra's tone was sharp. If it concerns me, it concerns him as well. Varrock hesitated, but he didn't argue. He simply turned and led the way. Ethan sighed. Great. More politics. A royal threat. The High Council chamber was a massive circular hall with towering stone pillars and glowing symbols carved into the walls. 12 Zypharian elders sat in a semicircle, their piercing eyes locked onto Ethan the moment he entered. He immediately felt like an outsider. One of the elders, a regal-looking woman with silver markings on her forehead, leaned forward. Queen Tyra, we have heard troubling reports. Zira kept her expression calm. Then let us discuss them. The elder's gaze shifted to Ethan. You're human. Ethan frowned. Here we go. Another elder spoke. We understand that he has proven himself in combat, but there are those who question his place among us. A human ruling beside you. It is unheard of. Vyra's voice remained steady. Ethan is not weak. He has earned respect. Varrock stepped forward, yet he has not earned the trust of all. He glanced at Ethan. Some believe this arrangement is dangerous, that it could divide the people. Ethan crossed his arms. So what's the solution? Kick me off the planet. The silver-marked elder exhaled. No, a test. Ethan's stomach sank. Another one. Zyra's eyes narrowed. What kind of test? Varrock smiled coldly. One that will prove whether this human is worthy of standing beside the queen. Ethan groaned. Let me guess, it's not an easy one. The elder nodded. A Zephyrian trial. He must face a challenge of strength, intelligence, and loyalty. If he succeeds, he will have our blessing. If he fails, he must leave. Silence filled the chamber. Ethan clenched his jaw. He had no interest in ruling an alien empire, but if he refused, it could insult Syra and damage relations between their species. Before he could respond, Syra stepped forward. No. The elders stiffened. No. Zara's golden eyes flashed with authority. Ethan has already proven himself in battle. This is unnecessary. Varrock's smirk widened. Are you afraid he will fail? Zyra's fists clenched. Ethan could tell she was holding back anger. Ethan took a deep breath. He didn't ask for any of this, but walking away wasn't an option anymore. He glanced at Zyra. I'll do it. She turned to him, surprised. Ethan. He held up a hand. Look, I don't like this any more than you do. But if this is what it takes to end this nonsense, fine. He looked at the elders. I'll take your test, but when I pass, I want one thing in return. The silver-marked elder raised an eyebrow. And what is that? Ethan's eyes locked onto Varrock. No more challenges. No more tests. No more talking behind my back. He folded his arms. If I win, You all accept that I'm not some weak human you can push around." The council murmured among themselves. Finally, the elder nodded. Agreed. Varrock, however, didn't look pleased. His smirk was gone, and for the first time, Ethan saw something else in his eyes. Concern. That's when Ethan knew. Whatever this test was, it wasn't going to be fair. Ethan stood in the center of the trial arena, his heart pounding as he scanned the battlefield. The Xipherian High Council wanted a test. They were about to get one. The arena was massive, surrounded by thousands of spectators who had gathered to witness the so-called human outsider prove his worth. The walls were lined with glowing symbols, ancient scripts that pulsed with energy. Above him, the two moons of Xiphar shone brightly, casting eerie shadows across the ground. Across the battlefield, General Varrock stood with his arms crossed, watching Ethan with cold amusement. "This test is more than just combat, human," Varrock said, his deep voice echoing across the arena. "Strength alone will not save you." Ethan rolled his shoulders, trying to stay loose. Yeah, let's get this over with." A loud horn blasted through the air. The test had begun. The first challenge. The maze of shadows. The ground beneath Ethan trembled, and suddenly, massive stone walls shot up around him, forming an intricate maze. The crowd roared in excitement. Ethan exhaled sharply. Great. A maze. He had no idea what was waiting inside, but standing around wouldn't help. He started running, turning corners carefully while keeping track of his movements. Then he heard it. A low growl echoed through the narrow passage. Ethan spun around just in time to see a creature unlike anything he had ever seen. It was a six-legged beast with obsidian black skin, eyes glowing red, and claws long enough to rip through metal. It moved like a shadow, blending with the darkness, its form flickering in and out of sight. Ethan backed away slowly. This thing wasn't just a test. It was a predator. The creature lunged. Ethan dove to the side, rolling just in time to avoid razor-sharp claws. He scrambled to his feet, heart racing. "All right, buddy. You want to play? Let's play." He grabbed a loose metal pipe from the ground. It wasn't much, but it was better than nothing. The beast circled him, watching, waiting. Then it attacked again. Ethan swung the pipe, striking its leg. But the creature barely flinched. Not good. Thinking fast, Ethan did something unexpected. He ran straight at the beast. The creature, surprised, hesitated for a split second. That was all Ethan needed. He slid beneath its belly and jabbed the pipe into its side, aiming for the soft flesh between its armored plates. The beast let out a piercing screech and collapsed. Ethan didn't stick around. He sprinted toward the next exit, knowing that more challenges were waiting. The second challenge. The Pillars of Judgment. When Ethan finally emerged from the maze, he found himself standing before three massive stone pillars, each glowing with ancient runes. Kajira and the High Council watched from a raised platform. The elder with silver markings stepped forward. Each pillar represents a path. Choose wisely, for only one will lead you forward. Ethan studied the pillars. No instructions, no clues, just three giant stones. This wasn't a test of strength. It was a test of judgment. Then he noticed something. The symbols on one of the pillars were slightly faded. His mind worked quickly. These were ancient trials, used for generations. The most used path would have the most worn-out symbols. He stepped forward and placed his hand on the faded pillar. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a deep rumble, the pillar split open, revealing the hidden passage. The crowd gasped in surprise. Ethan smirked. Got it right. The final challenge. The duel. Ethan stepped into the final chamber. At the center stood General Varrock. Ethan sighed. Of course it's you. Varrock smirked. The council believes you have earned your place, but I disagree. He drew his double-bladed energy sword. Defeat me, and I will accept you. Lose, and you will leave Xiphar forever. Ethan clenched his fists. Fine. Let's finish this. Varrock charged. Ethan barely dodged as the blade sliced through the air, sending sparks flying. He grabbed a fallen combat staff from the ground, blocking Varrock's next strike. Varrock was fast, too fast. Every strike was precise, powerful, and unrelenting. Ethan barely managed to keep up, deflecting blows while looking for an opening. Then he saw it. Varrock always followed his overhead strike with a sweeping kick. Ethan waited. The moment Varrock swung downward, Ethan sidestepped and slammed his staff into Varrock's exposed ribs. The general staggered. Ethan didn't hesitate. He spun, struck Varrock's wrist, and knocked the sword from his hand. Varrock fell to one knee, breathing heavily. Ethan pointed the staff at him. Yield. Varrock's jaw tightened. For a long moment, he didn't move. Then, slowly he nodded. The arena fell into silence. Then, cheers erupted. Ethan exhaled. It was over. Scifi stepped forward, smiling. You have proven yourself, Ethan. Ethan smirked. Told you I could handle it. The High Council elder raised a hand. By the laws of Sci-Fi, you have passed the trials. You are worthy to stand beside our queen. Ethan sighed. Great. More responsibilities. But as he glanced at Scifi, he saw something in her expression. Pride. Maybe this wasn't so bad after all. Ethan stood in the grand hall of the Zephyrian palace, surrounded by the High Council, warriors, and thousands of citizens who had gathered to witness the final judgment. The massive golden banners of the royal family waved behind Queen Scifi as she stood at the center of the chamber, her piercing violet eyes fixed on him. You have passed every test, the elder counselor declared, his deep voice echoing across the hall. You have shown strength, intelligence, and resilience. By our ancient laws, you are worthy to stand as the queen's chosen consort, her husband. The crowd erupted in cheers. Some pounded their chests in approval, while others chanted Sarah's name. The moment had finally arrived. Ethan, however, felt a weight settle in his chest. Was this really happening? Just a few days ago, he had been an outsider, mistaken for Scifi's husband because of a simple misunderstanding. Now he stood on the brink of becoming the consort of an alien queen. Scifi took a step forward, her expression unreadable. Ethan, she said, her voice steady, you have earned this place. But the final choice remains yours. Will you accept your position at my side? A hush fell over the hall. Every eye was locked onto him. Ethan took a deep breath. Look, I never planned for any of this, he said, his voice cutting through the silence. I never imagined standing here, being part of your world. But in these last few days, I've learned something. He looked at the people surrounding him. Their expectant faces, their admiration, and even those who had once doubted him. I learned that humanity and Zypharians are not so different. We both fight for what we believe in. We protect those we care about. And sometimes, we make mistakes that lead to unexpected paths. A few warriors nodded in agreement. Even General Varrock, who had opposed him at first, now watched with quiet respect. Ethan turned back to Scifi. I don't know what the future holds, but if you'll have me, then I'll stand with you. The hall erupted into cheers. Scifi's eyes gleamed, and for the first time, she allowed herself a small smile. Then it is decided, she said, reaching out her hand. Ethan took it. The coronation ceremony. The next day, the grand ceremony was held in the Temple of Stars, the holiest place in Zephyr. Scifi stood at the altar, dressed in flowing silver robes embroidered with the symbols of her ancestors. Ethan wore a formal warrior's uniform, a symbol of his trials and victory. It felt strange, standing in front of thousands of people, knowing that his life had changed forever. The elder counselor stepped forward. By the power of the Zephyrian crown, we recognize Ethan, the human, as the consort of our queen. Scifi turned to Ethan, placing a golden bracelet around his wrist, a Zephyrian tradition representing loyalty and partnership. Ethan smirked. Guess this means I'm officially part of the team now. Zyra chuckled softly. You were always part of it, Ethan. You just didn't know it yet. The crowd cheered, and the Zyfarian anthem echoed through the temple. Epilogue. A new beginning. Days passed, and Ethan adjusted to his new life in the royal palace. It wasn't easy. There were political meetings, diplomatic discussions, and endless ceremonial duties. But he wasn't alone. Zyra often sought his counsel, and despite the formalities, she treated him as an equal, not just a consort. Even General Varrock, though still skeptical, had come to respect him. One evening, Ethan and Zyra stood on the palace balcony, looking over the glowing city of Zephyr. So, what happens now? Ethan asked. Zyra smirked. Now, we build a future. Ethan chuckled. No pressure, huh? Zyra looked at him, her expression warm. With you by my side, I think we'll be just fine. As the stars shone brightly above them, Ethan realized something. Maybe he hadn't just found a place on Zephyr. Maybe he had found a home. The end.